Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 42, coming at you from the Valley. And do we got another fun, loaded MMA show? I'm your host, Shane Gillette. Episode 42 for all of those that are tuning into Bows and TKOs. We're streaming anywhere you get your audio, video on YouTube, weekly podcast, most of the time filmed on Tuesday, new pod out on Wednesday. Try to make that even sooner. If your audio, you get it sooner than the video as it's uploading to YouTube. But yeah, weekly MMA show. If you're trying to get into MMA, especially the UFC, it's a UFC heavy show. Because honestly, as a diehard MMA fan from years and years ago, I mean, we're talking Gabriel, Gonzaga, we're talking Chuck Tito 1, we're talking Randy Couture, way back in the day. The UFC is just the product that's worth tuning into. I wrestled in high school. I practiced jiu-jitsu. You know, I've been around all kinds of mixed martial arts. It's just not really worth watching some of the other promotions, in my opinion. The quality's not there. I've never been pulled in. And as an ex-sports journalism major, the production of the show is just not that great. So each week, breaking down any new fights that have been announced since the last week, or anything like fighters pulling out, new announcements. This week, for example, we have PFL in the regular season. We're going to preview that a little bit, not a deep dive. Going to recap UFC Atlantic City and then preview UFC Fight Night Vegas 90 in the Apex. So, pretty stacked show. Again, I'm your host, Shane Gillette. If you're tuning in, please like and subscribe or leave a review on any podcast channel that you're streaming into. Very much appreciated, as I'm really looking to take this to the next level. I've been doing this for a couple years, did a rebrand, really just focused on MMA now to find that niche, and excited here in Phoenix in the MMA Mecca to be able to get fighters on, tell their stories to help future fighters, as the fight game is just a brutal place, and then also be able to maybe talk a little bit about fights if they like fights. Not all fighters do. But let's get into episode 42. We have some fights announced for some pay-per-views upcoming, summer cards and the Saudi card. We have Derek Lewis taking on Rodrigo Nascimento May 11th. It's always great to see the knockout king, the Black Beast, do his thing. We have JJ Aldrich taking on Veronica Hardy May 11th. Pretty intriguing fight in women's MMA. For 302, UFC 302, we have, which is in Newark, New Jersey, we have some decent fights. We got Phil Rowe taking on Jake Matthews, two very skilled strikers. Nico Price and Jeremiah Wells on that UFC 302 card. For the June 8th fight night, we have Bruno Ferreira and Dustin Stoltzfus, two heavy hitters, and Thiago Moises with a quick turnaround against Ludovic Klein. Also, for the May 18th card, we have Chaos Williams taking on Carlston Harris. That is a certified banger. And then added to the already stacked Saudi Arabia card, we have Muin Gafurov taking on Kyung Ho Kong. And a really fun one here, Renat Fakhretdinov and Nicholas Dalby. I am fired up for that one, that is for sure. And then in kind of more bummer news, we have Alex Perez in against Matheus Nicolau as Manel Kopp is out due to injury. Kopp out due to injury. Tagir Olenbekov is off this fight, so he needs a new opponent. This Thursday, we have PFL San Antonio. Some decent fights here for the PFL. Name-wise, some ex-UFC talent per usual. And this is the start of their regular season PFL events. Just to give you an example, let's pull up the schedule. I believe they have 3 weeks in a row for the first part of regular season for their seeding. And then they resume the regular season in June. But see, they're fighting now in April. They got a little bit more than a month and a half to make fights again, which in other promotions such as the UFC, these guys are taking 6 months to a year off depending on what happens, which makes this, if you are signed up for the PFL regular season, which makes it so intriguing. You don't have to be. Guys like Shane Burgos or others, you might just take big quality fights and not be a part of the regular season. But the regular season, we have April 4th, 12th, and 19th. Different weight classes on each card. This card is the heavyweights and women's flyweights. The next week we'll have light heavyweights and lightweights, then welterweights and featherweights, and then they do it again in June for the second part of the regular season. And to kick it off, we got to start with the guy kicking off the entire night on ESPN Plus, Wyoming legend, a guy that trains here in the MMA lab and with the Sugar Show and Tim Welch at the Red Hawk Academy. We have Bryce Meredith taking on Ty Johnson to kick off the prelims. So if you're a little bit more of a hardcore fan like myself, check out Bryce Meredith. He's going to be a stud in the bantamweight division, just getting his feet wet. I think this is his 5th or 6th pro fight. We have Kana Watanabe taking on Shanna Young. Ex-UFC contender Talia Santos taking on Alara Joanne. We have Sergey Bilistany taking on Blagoy Ivanov, a recent former UFC fighter. Dakota Dacheva, who's 11-0 undefeated, taking on Lisa Maldine. Ex-UFC mainstay and PFL dominator Liz Carmouche taking on Juliana Velasquez. Dennis Goltsov taking on Linton Vassell. And Valentin Moldavsky taking on Auntie Dalia. I don't break these down in depth like the UFC, but these are the ones that are worth watching. Really excited to see Bryce Meredith. I'm picking him in that fight. I'll take Kana Watanabe against Shanna Young. I think Talia Santos is going to dominate in the PFL, so should be easy win for her. I have no idea about the Blagoy Ivanov fight. Every Blagoy Ivanov fight is pretty chaotic, but should be a fun one. See how the PFL competition stacks up. I'm going to take the undefeated Dakota. Liz Carmouche has already beat Juliana Velasquez twice. I doubt there will be a change here. I'm going to take Linton Vassell. I'm not a huge fan of Dennis Goltsov. And I am going to take Valentin Moldavsky over Auntie Dalia. The fun thing about this is there is now a little bit of some new blood injected. As the PFL bought Bellator, they're still keeping Bellator events. They still have some PFL versus Bellator champions that were off the championship card because of injuries. And there are some now Bellator fighters, quality fighters, injected into the regular season to change up and add for better competition. That's how they're playing it this year. There's some foreign events, all Bellator named, coming down later this year that we will talk about when the time comes. But I'm interested to see coming into the year of 2025 how the PFL manages it, and if they're going to keep it the same. But let's jump into what we saw this past weekend in Atlantic City. Was glad to get out of the Apex for a week. I went 6-6 on my picks, 500. I'll take it. Just was a weird night overall. But that puts the podcast record at 264 wins. 129 losses and 6 no contest or draws. So I have more than doubled up on the losses. Love to see it. On the year, not quite so much. I am 71 wins, 43 losses, and 3 no contests or draws. I feel like I pick with the best of them. I do some fun betting and parlaying just to be into it. You know, chump change stuff. I'm not a capper or hardcore bettor. I thought maybe as I get this podcast built, maybe after 100 episodes, have a Discord or a Facebook chat or Telegram or something where we could all talk fights. I could give you the exact bets that I'm making, but I will pick who I just think will win in the fight. And if I say put them on that parlay, I'm pretty damn confident you could put them in somewhat of a parlay. But again, I'm not a capper or hardcore bettor. I like to do it for fun, casual. I feel like I got it down pretty good. I made some good money in UFC betting, but that is not my goal. When I think of how this card went down overall, I just still have a bitter taste in my mouth. There was a lot of early stoppages in this card. Some eye pokes that definitely ruined the vibe. Some bad reffing again and judging, which that's a couple weeks in a row. And it kind of just left me feeling, But there was some decent fights. We'll talk about some fights that we did not break down last week. But man, was this a fun one. We had the second fight. They fought before the UFC. between Ibo Aslan, who was making his UFC debut, ended up with a round through 3 TKO over Anton Turkalj. Fight of the night, 50 G's to those fighters, and golly, was it just straight chaos from the get. Anton Turkalj had actually beat Ibo in their first matchup, used grappling to his advantage, but this was literally a fight in a phone booth. You see those memes of people fighting literally in the old, like, red England-style phone booth. These guys did not create any space. They were just slugging and firing after it, and I think both men were pretty confident they could beat each other. But usually the guy who wins the first fight, comes in with that mental confidence. And you could tell that was Anton. He's trying to make a name for himself on the UFC roster. He really didn't go to grappling much at all until he was completely exhausted. So you could tell he wasn't really game planning on doing that this time around. Great fight. If you're an ESPN Plus subscriber like myself, you haven't watched it, I highly recommend going back and checking it out. It's worth the minutes. Then we had Dennis Bazukja with a round 3 TKO over Connor Matthews. Performance of the night, 50 G's. What a good performance by Dennis. And when I say guys like Dennis Bazukja, that's Buzukja, no, I don't know that much about him. That's why I didn't break his fight down. Good luck pronouncing that. I'm an ex-journalism majored in broadcast journalism. I take pride in knowing people's names, but I have not heard that guy's name. I'm not going to go look for someone to see it. I didn't even break the fight down. I'm just saying these were good fights, worth rewatching if you hadn't, or the people that have won might be worth tuning into. Dennis looking quality. Ibo Aslan, a big striker, could be a problem as well. But we're going to kick it off in the prelims, where we had Jacob Malkoun with a round 2 TKO over Andre Petroski. I mean, this is really a coin flip of a fight. I pick because I have to. That's part of the pod. You want my picks. I'm going to give you my best educated decision and how confident I am. This was as much of a coin flip fight as there could be. But this fight really just kind of brought some of the weird exotic stuff that happened on this card. The first round, a tit-for-tat round. I was surprised that Jacob was boxing well. He had the straighter, cleaner strikes, which we don't usually see for Jacob. But again, he's still only 28, not even in his fighting prime yet. And in the first round, he turned Andre into the wrestler, which Jacob has good MMA grappling as well. Maybe not the wrestling accolades that Andre does, but he turned him into a grappler. Andre landed some solid shots himself, but Andre was just coming out hot. I think he was confident that he could get a finish and outstrike Jacob, and was in for a little bit of a shocker because he came out throwing big, loopy, powerful shots, wasted and exerted a ton of energy, and none of them landed clean. And maybe that was he was confident he was going to outstrike Jacob, or maybe it's because he's from the Philly area, which is like a rock's throw away from Atlantic City. So all of his people were there. That could bring some extra energy in, get your heart rate going, get you just kind of seeing red and not thinking. Who knows what it is? But that's not even the crazy part. Getting into round 2, Andre was definitely winning the grappling exchanges when they had him, but he shot for a blast double leg and just went like cuckoo, lost his balance. I forget what they call the thing that if you hit it, you can lose your balance. A lot of people had different takes on it. But what happened is when you're a wrestler and you post and really go for that blast leg double, like if you've ever felt someone's hip bone, it's pretty solid. So if you go in there and rock yourself on that hip bone, it could do that. And that's exactly what happened. Andre blast doubled himself out of the fight because he literally couldn't even stand. And because he couldn't get his balance, he just laid on the mat, covered up. Jacob got on, got the TKO finish. What a bizarre fight here. And for my picks, it just started off awkwardly as well. So statistically, Jacob landed 21 total strikes, 20 of which were significant. He was 0 for 3 in his own takedown attempts. So again, Andre was winning those grappling exchanges. And Andre landed 13 total insignificant strikes with 1 takedown and 2 attempts. Now, Jacob starts a new winning streak. He is 3-2 since 2022. And Andre extends his losing streak to 2. He is 3-2 since 2022. Been active, had some good wins on a tough stretch. Same with Jacob, but now he's getting into that momentum. So where do these guys go next? Well, I'm down to see Jacob take on Gerald Mearshart or maybe a Brad Tavares. Great styles for him, getting the OGs, moving up the rankings. Let's make those fights happen. And for Andre, if he could get a fight with Marc-Andre Barriault, I think that is the perfect fight for both men and would be a win for the fans. Moving on, we had Julio Arce with a round 2 TKO over Herbert Burns. And in the first round, Herbert looked pretty solid after some time off. He was landing more volume when it was striking, and he even had Julio up against the cage and kept trying for takedowns, but didn't have much luck. In round 2, it was all Julio having success with his striking. It seemed as Herbert gassed himself with all the effort that he put in round 1. And really this was kind of the start of an early stoppage debacle throughout the evening. Julio rocked Herbert. He fell to the ground after being up against the cage, but wasn't even close to being out. Like, yeah, he got rocked, he fell down, but he's a guy that likes to pull guard. And the ref just called off the fight. Herbert shook his head. I didn't really agree with it. I haven't since looked to see what Herbert's response was to that, or if he felt like that was an early stoppage at all. But for me, I thought he could at least Julio jump on him, Herbert see if he could pull him into guard or defend himself with up kicks or something. But there's just been a lot of early stoppages. Bad reffing, bad judging, bad officiating in general. So it's just seeming like it's being micro-analyzed now. It's under the microscope, and it just seems like it's getting like to be a bigger and bigger concern over these fight night cards. The pay-per-views, not so much, but these fight night cards lately have been brutal, and I was hoping being out of the Apex would fix that issue. Clearly not. Statistically, Julio landed 29 total insignificant strikes. He was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts, and he had 2 knockdowns. Herbert landed 20 total strikes, 15 significant, and he was 0 for 6 in takedown attempts. So using all that energy, he gassed himself out. Julio, great job defending the takedowns. He knew that was going to be the game plan. And Herbert did have a minute and 16 seconds of control time, which really is that control time up against the cage. Now Julio starts a new winning streak. He is 2-1 since 2022, and Herbert extends his losing streak to 3. This is his first win since July of 2022. Excuse me. This is Herbert's first fight since July of 2022. He has not won since June of 2020. If Herbert is in the UFC again after this, he could fight Gabriel Santos. And for Julio, how about a scrap with Gavin Tucker? I think that would be a ton of fun with the styles there. Moving on. I got the Julio Arce fight right. This is a fight I did not get wrong, and I was very concerned of how this played out, that it could play out this way. And that's just Virna Jandiroba with another unanimous decision victory, this time over Lupi Godinez. And this was just a typical Virna fight, literally going like Merab Dvalishvili style and going broke looking for a takedown, and Lupi doing a good part for majority of the fight defending those takedowns. I did think Lupi, though, wasn't as aggressive as I would have liked to see when they were standing and striking. It's like she was timid, waiting for the takedown or looking to counter, and I thought she would be up in Virna's face, pushing her back, and that wasn't the case. Virna was even having success when she was just lunging forward with the jab, staying in tight, lunging forward in her weird little motion, and just kind of spearing that jab at Lupi. It definitely was wearing on her throughout the course of the fight. And again, Lupi battled really hard. She did not give up. It's not always fun fighting a opponent like this. She exerted a ton of energy getting up from the takedowns as well, because Virna had quite a few of them. So doing that over and over for 15 minutes could get old. It could kind of break you mentally. You could be in a bad position, get submitted by Virna, and she didn't. She had moments on her feet. If the fight would have stayed a striking battle, I'm confident Lupi would have got the win, but a tough loss for her and a classic Virna Jandiroba dub here. Statistically, Virna landed 86 total strikes. 30 of them were significant. She had 2 takedowns, although 9 attempts. So bravo to Lupi. That's pretty good to hold her only 2 for 7. Virna did have 3 submission attempts, a reversal, and 6 minutes and 35 seconds of control time. So over a full entire round. And Lupi landed 50 total strikes, 38 of them significant, so she actually had more significant strikes. She had a reversal and a minute and 52 seconds of control time herself. So now Virna extends her winning streak to 3. She hasn't fought twice a year since 2021, so it'll be interesting to see if she gets another fight this year. I'm sure it's hard for her to get opponents to want to fight her, but she stays at 5 in the rankings. And Lupi ends her 4-fight winning streak, starts a new losing streak. She stays at 10 in the rankings. So where do these women go next? Well, I think Virna and Amanda Lemos, that makes sense. She's earned herself an opportunity to fight up. And for Lupi, she could get a scrap with Mackenzie Dern. That would be a ton of fun. Moving on for the prelim headliner, we had Nate the Train Landwehr put on a show with a round 1 TKO over Jamal Emmers. Performance of the night, another 50 G's for Nate the Train. How can you not like this guy? In classic Nate the Train style, he withstood an early onslaught from his opponent. Jamal had him beat up pretty bad, came out, guns a-blazing, and Jamal started to fade to get a knockdown and really just kind of gassed himself out on beating Nate's ass up. And Nate even said post-fight interview, beat my ass and find out. Like, you want to beat my ass, you're going to find out. You're going to try to come in and bring this a brawl fight. You're going to learn who's the last man standing at the end of it. But he did too much. Nate landed a nice shot, was able to get a knockdown. He pounced on Emmers for the finish. Classic Nate the Train style. What a freaking barn burner this was in the first round while it lasted. Statistically, Nate landed 37 total strikes and significant with a knockdown, and Jamal landed 39 total and significant. I swear majority of that 39 was the first 2.5 minutes. The majority of Nate's 37, the last 2.5 minutes. So now Nate starts another winning streak. He moves to 3-1 since 2022. And Jamal starts a new losing streak. He is an even 2-2 since 2022. So where do these guys go next? Well, I would love to see Nate take on Nathaniel Wood, while Jamal can fight Fernando Padilla. I think those would be great stylistic matchups all around. But moving on to the main card, we had Chidi Nwankwo with a split decision victory over Reese McKee. Glad Chidi got this win. This was big for the Pick'ems as well. But this fight really took place 2 separate places. When it was striking, Chidi was having his way, especially as the fight wore on, because Reese was trying to get takedowns over and over. He had Chidi up against the cage looking to complete a takedown for a lot of the fight. But Chidi did a good job getting his back up against the cage. When he got taken down, Reese would come get a takedown. He'd scoop, get up against the cage, find a way back up top. And after avoiding full takedowns and avoiding Reese's game plan, Reese just tired himself out. You know, if you shoot takedown after takedown, good luck with your gas tank. And Chidi just had more success with the strikes that ended up winning on the scorecards. Each round was pretty murky. It's not like there was a clear winner each round. It was a lot of Chidi defending, landing some ground and pound, good strikes until the takedowns. I'm glad he won. Could have been a unanimous decision, but it was a split decision. So statistically, Chidi landed 96 total strikes, 64 of those significant, and he was 0 for 2 in takedowns himself. And Reese landed 40 total strikes, 30 of them significant. He was 0 for 7 in takedown attempts. He did have 6 minutes and 41 seconds of control time, all that up against the cage, so, more than a round. But yeah, 0 for 7, you're trying those takedowns against a long, lanky fighter like Chidi. That's going to wear you out, and mentally it's going to be tough on you. You kind of feel defeated, right? So Chidi ends his 3-fight losing streak, gets back in the win column. He moves to 3-3 since 2022. He's been active. He's been getting after it. And Reese extends his losing streak to 2. He is 2-2 since 2022. Where do these guys go next? Well, let's give Chidi another long, lengthy striker. I'd love to see Chidi and Wellington Turman. And for Reese, he could fight Gilbert Urbina. Another bit of a shocker here, a fight I got wrong. Kyle Nelson not with just a finish, but a round 1 TKO over Bill Algeo. And a lot of these fights, some of the fighters just blazing out of the gates. And this was one of those fights, both guys just getting after it. A very high-paced first round. I was honestly surprised in Kyle's striking. He was landing the cleaner shots. He was really controlling distance well and controlling the pace of the fight against Bill, who is very experienced and usually is the dictator. But this was another mess of an early stoppage for me. Bill's been there, done that. He's been in wars. I'm not saying if the official, kept the fight going that Bill would have recovered and won the fight, but he should have been giving more grace, especially with all the wars he's been in. And this just really left the fight. Like the excitement of the first round just went to shit in my opinion. And it was the exact same fight, or the exact same official that was just making a mess all night. He, in the Turkali fight, had a groin shot issue. Turkali's opponent doesn't really speak good English, and the official's like, you ready? The fighter's like, I'm ready to go. And then the official's like, no, like, think about it. Like, make sure you're good. And just, like, don't tell the fighter what he needs. If he's ready to go, get him in there. Let's get the fight going. You know what I mean? So just a lot of weird drama here. Couple early stoppages. The weird officiating. But statistically, Bill landed 44 total strikes, 30 of those significant, compared to Kyle's 40 total, 32 significant. But he had Bill rocked. Bill landed some clean shots in this fight as well. But Kyle was really dictating the fight, and I have not seen that version of Kyle Nelson living up to his nickname, the Monster. But Kyle, he extends his winning streak to 3. He had a no contest in there as well. And Bill starts a new losing streak. He has 4-2 since 2022. He's been active. So, well, I think Kyle Nelson, what could be next? Julian Erosa. I think that would be a fun fight. And for Bill, he could square up against Charles Jourdain. I think that would be a fun one for both men as well, and for the fans. Moving on, we have Nursultan Ruziboev with a round 1 TKO over Cedric Dumas. This is just, the controversy continues. Nursultan was dominating this fight. This was a very lopsided affair for as much as the action happened. Nursultan was aggressive with the striking. He was controlling the pace, controlling distance. But it got interesting as he landed a punch, and when he pulled away, poked Cedricus in the eye, Cedricus kind of like pulled away, acted like he was rocked and went down to the ground, but he was trying to tell the ref it was an eye poke. They did not review the fight for an eye poke. They kept the decision with Nursultan, round 1 TKO. I'm not opposed to it because he was dominating. He pretty much deserved that. But weird situation because they didn't realize it was an eye poke. They missed it. Cedricus should have had some time to be able to go get his 5 minutes and continue the fight. But I think Ruziboev was on his way to dominate anyways. But he did jump in, try to go for broke and get the finish right away. Which leads me on to, can we please get rid of the UFC gloves? When your fighters like to control distance and your gloves are opening their hands, everyone's getting freaking poked, fingers are flying everywhere. The fighters have so much to think about, they can't think, keep my hands closed. I mean, maybe you should because that's good punching form, but a lot of the time they're, controlling distance, eyes up, tapping, just fingers everywhere. Drives me freaking nuts. We don't need fights like this ruined due to damn eye pokes. Trevor Whitman has great gloves. I know the UFC wants the rights of Trevor Whitman's gloves because they're a business. Everything's about margins. For Christ's sakes, get the gloves. Rant over. Statistically, it only took Nursultan 12 total insignificant strikes with a knockdown. Cedricus only landed one significant in total strike. Now Nursultan's coming in. This guy's going to be a problem. Winning streak is now up to 10. 2 of those in the UFC. And Cedricus ends his 2-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak. Where do they give Nursultan next? Well, I don't even think it's a question of where do they want to get him. Where should they put him? It's going to be who's going to even want to sign a contract to fight this guy. Well, the Iron Turtle's always down no matter who you are. He's had a lot of underdog wins. Give me Nursultan and Jung Young Park. That's about as good as a matchup as the Iron Turtle's going to get. He never shies away from the challenge. Let's let him have it. And for Cedricus, he can fight Punahele Soriano. That would be a banger as well. Moving on, we get the New Jersey man, Chris Weidman, pulling off a unanimous decision over Bruno Silva. And this was another fight I got wrong. I did not think he could do it. I did get the Nursultan fight right. But this fight had some crazy striking exchanges. Both men rocked each other, and Chris really looked the best he's looked. I mean, a long time off. Obviously, we know how crazy the surgeries and the leg break was. He was firing kick after kick with both legs. He came out and said after his return fight, he told himself he wanted to fire a leg kick. He didn't. He said his brain wouldn't let him do it. Well, that brain situation has been fixed because he was firing those limbs, man. And round one, Chris was actually controlling the fight. He had control time after a takedown, really just made the fight anywhere he wanted it and had good slick boxing. Round two, both men fired off a ton of wild exchanges, but Chris was having his way, and Bruno needed to most likely get a finish when it came to round three. But after multiple eye poke timeouts in this fight, Bruno then gets eye poked, clearly an eye poke, but it looked like a punch, kind of like the Cedricus situation, because right away when Bruno got eye poked, he like flailed down like he was knocked out, but he was trying to flail down and complain because this was the second eye poke. I think there was even a groin shot in here as well. And he protested the situation for minutes and minutes after the fight. It was a clear eye poke on the replay, but this was the second time, which the first time you get a warning, there should be a penalty. They did not review it. When they did review it after the fight, they just changed the decision from a TKO to a unanimous decision. Not an ideal way necessarily to get back on the winning track in front of the home crowd. But if it would have went to the scorecards, I think Chris was winning this fight. And although I don't agree with Chris winning in this shitty way, again, I think he was on pace to win the fight, so that makes it a little better. But I agree with what Chris said, like, hey, Bruno, like he respects Bruno. Bruno's been around for a while, kind of living with his last UFC life. He really needed a win here. If you're going to get eye poked, don't flail down and complain about it. You know, put a hand up like, hey, I got eye poked. You know, make a cleaner situation where it doesn't seem like you got rocked or you're trying to cover something up. He just didn't handle the situation very good. I know there's a language barrier. You never know. It's hard to think like that when you're in a freaking fist fight. But it was not handled very well by Bruno. But still, Chris, the best version he's looked, in my opinion, still not a very good way to get a win. And just the way the judging, the officiating, and everything was handled with all these eye poke moments, early stoppages, the official telling the guy, no, take your time. Like, it's just bad auras here. But statistically, Chris landed 88 total strikes, 75 of them significant. He did have a takedown, although 4 attempts, so Bruno doing a pretty good job defending. Chris also had the knockdown and 3 minutes and 15 seconds of control time. Bruno landed 30 total and significant strikes. So Chris ends that 2-fight losing streak, starts a new losing streak at 39 years old, his 40th birthday in June, right around the corner. This was his first win since August of 2020, about 4 years, and that was against a guy I don't even know, Omari Akhmedov. Before that, his real quality win was July of 2017, 7 years ago. Now, Bruno extends his losing streak to 3. He is 1-5 in the UFC since 2022. That means your life's on the line. So what's next for these guys? Well, if Bruno is still in the UFC, I think Michael Oleksiuk would be the fight to make. And for Chris, I think it's got to be a meaningful fight. You know, he's not going to have much left. Chris even acknowledged if he didn't feel good, things didn't go his way, he might retire. I was for him retiring before this fight with all that he's been through. But let's give him a fight like Paul Craig, the Bear Jew, the All-American. I think everyone will sign up for that one. Moving on to the co-main event. We had Joaquin Buckley with a round 2 TKO over Vicente Luque. Another fight I got wrong, but I am not shocked by the results. And round one, two really talented guys in the top 15. It was just a lot of measuring, right? Kind of filling each other out. It was looking like the power from Buckley was going to be a problem for Vicente, as he was really pushing Vicente around. And he knew that he needed to get Buckley down to the octagon, but that wasn't very successful. And by round two, Buckley was really putting it on Vicente. He was just getting through his defense, pushing him around, storming him, landing clean shots. And he had Vicente up against the cage, and Vicente just went down and pulled guard, which seemed like a kind of a weird desperation move. I know your BJJ's good, but if you're going to pull guard, pull the guy that's on top control in and try to look for submission attempts. He just let Buckley sit in his guard, postured up, no grabbing of the hands or anything, just covering up, just teeing off on the guy. And a big burly guy like that, Buckley, who's even come down weight classes, it's just not going to be good if a guy's dominating you with ground and pound. I wouldn't say there was a shot that clearly rocked Vicente by any means. He didn't have any cuts, no elbows. He wasn't bloody. Now, some of the shots went through his guard. You know, he's got his gloves there and his arms trying to defend. But he didn't try to get a submission up. He didn't try to advance positions or try to get up from his back, you know, fire, hammer, fist back or anything. So the official just called the fight early. This was the same official that had his hands all over this card. I don't think that he should have called the fight. Vicente really didn't defend himself, though. It seemed like, you know, Buckley even said in the post-fight interview he broke Vicente. Vicente just kind of wanted to quit, and that could be the case. Vicente's come off a really bad beating through the past few years. He got beat up by Jeff Neal pretty good. But the debate here could be that Vicente wasn't defending himself. He wasn't rocked at all. So, you know, that's the ref's job. But again, I think Buckley just kind of broke him. He felt his power, and he was not having it. Huge win for Buckley in the new division. Contender, here we come. Statistically, Vicente landed 22 total strikes, 21 of those significant. He was 0 for 3 in takedown attempts. And Buckley landed 63 total strikes, 55 of those significant. Buckley now has a 3-fight winning streak, all since he's moved down to welterweight. He is 5-2 since 2022. He's active. He's on a roll. He enters the welterweight rankings at number 11. And Vicente starts a new losing streak. He moves to 1-3 since 2022. He moves down 3 spots in the rankings to number 11. But where do these gents go next? Well, I think the fight that makes way too much sense for me is Buckley and Stephen Thompson. I don't know if Stephen's going to want to have that fight, but he will know that Buckley's going to stand and trade with him. So that is an intriguing striker versus striking fight for me. And for Vicente, he could fight Kevin Holland in another great stylistic matchup for the fans. I'm shocked these guys haven't fought. I think that would be a win-win, especially after Kevin's last loss. And for Stephen, I know Buckley in the post-fight press conference was talking about wanting to headline St. Louis. A main event 5-rounder for Stephen Thompson, it just seems like the appropriate match. Although Derek Lewis is supposed to headline that. In the main event, I want to confirm, Manon was the underdog, right? UFC Atlantic City. If I was just full of money, I was damn near willing to put a couple hundo on this. I just knew it. Plus 164 would have been a nice payday, but the underdog shouldn't have been the dog. Manon Fiorot with a brutal beatdown in a unanimous decision over Aaron Blanchfield. In the men's version, you would say Aaron Blanchfield got big brothered, but I guess you will call it she got big sistered. I mean, Manon has been fighting at a championship level for a few years now. She still hasn't had a title shot. She's coming off former strawweight division, multiple champion in Rose Namajunas. And, although it was her first flyweight fight, there is no doubt now after the way she just demolished Aaron Blanchfield. She showed Aaron, you're solid, you're good, but there are levels to this game. I have the experience. I have the power. Here's the things that you need to level up on. And Aaron's best MO is to get you taken down, have top control, find ground and pound and submissions. But every time she even tried, the octagon's massive. When two fighters are measuring themselves up, I don't know why I'm standing with my left hand back. I would not be that. I'm a right hand guy, and I am not very good with my left anything. But they're standing there back from the octagon. Once they start getting close, right, Demetrius, been loving Mighty Mouse's YouTube. He says he calls it the void. Which fighters are good at controlling the void? Like Sean O'Malley, long, lengthy, really good at controlling distance. Anytime Erin tried to get close where she was trying to find something to grab onto, Manon would just rock her. She would either give her a nice jab, which was really powerful, a nice check hook, or bring her in for a clinch and get a takedown. Manon was just throwing Erin around to the side with ease, like just throwing her around like she was chump change. They did not look like they were in the same class whatsoever with their build either. And Erin would keep trying, come in, boom, boom, nice 1-2 from Manon. That would push her back 6 feet. She'd come in again, boom, boom. It was crazy. But I will say, as the fight wore on, as Manon dominated rounds 1 and round 2, you thought she might get a finish. She had rocked Erin a couple times. Credit to Erin listening to her corner, and her corner was very transparent with her. You need to do this. You need to do this. This is open. You need to get a finish. She was listening to her corner, giving her corner's advice a go. If she said, hey, those high kicks are open, she's firing high kicks. Whatever it is, for 25 minutes to do that when you are getting beat down like that, to not mentally completely break, not many fighters, either men or women, are going to do that. She is only 24 years old. Take a second and think back to where you were at 24. I am 31, 32 this July, 7 years. I was barely surviving in Seattle, trying to get my professional career under the way, working crazy hours. But what I had done from postgraduate of college from 21 to 24 was sharpen this right here. And the reason I was able to do that is I was around people that were better than me, sharper than me. You surround yourself with good people. You become your surroundings. You are the sum of the 10 people you surround yourself with. Erin is surrounding herself with very mentally sharp people, because at 24 years old, that is very impressive. Not many 24-year-olds are going to be that. A lot of 24-year-olds are the crazy trolls on Twitter these days, or are still living with their parents, having a dead-end job. I am very, very impressed from what I saw from Erin. Although I am pro Manon here, I knew she would dominate. I thought those odds were a freaking slap in the face. I wish I would have thrown more money on it. I was so damn confident Manon would show up this way. But sometimes you take victories in your defeats. I think Erin had a victory here. I think she was overly confident coming into this fight and learned a big lesson as well. But I do think we will see Erin in a championship bout in her career. At the same time, for Manon, I just was not impressed that she did not really push the issue. When you're smoking some girl, just throwing her off to the side, just smoking her with 1-2s, big right hooks, anything that you're going for that long, go for the freaking finish. Add to the highlight reel. I know you've had this long streak and she probably didn't want to put herself at risk for the title shot, but that's what separates superstars versus title contenders versus people that come in and out of the MMA. Superstars have highlights. They go for it. That's what you need to do. I thought she was going to do that. She did not do that. She was more dominant. She was faster, clearly more powerful than Erin. Give it a shot. Why not? I mean, she had Erin completely rocked a couple times and just sat there and waited for her to come back. Now, statistically, Erin landed 135 total strikes, 130 of those significant. Again, I've ranted about this a few times. I have no idea how these stats are accumulated, but I can tell you right now and that's why stats are tricky. When I can't watch a fight, I usually don't wait to see. My phone has so many damn updates and whatnot. But I will look at the stats on ESPN to see what happened. Oh man, this must have happened. Sometimes you look at the stats, it's a completely different fight. You would look at the stats here and be like, man, Erin was competing. These 130 significant strikes, I would say maybe 40. She was not landing majority significant strikes, but hey, she did have a submission attempt and she was 0 for 3 in takedown attempts. Didn't come close when she had an actual attempt, but she just couldn't close range or, not get big sistered, I guess we'll call it, when she was anywhere close to Manon. Manon landed 181 total strikes, 172 of those significant. She had 1 takedown and 4 attempts of her own. So Manon now extends her winning streak to 12. Sheesh! She's 7-0 in the UFC, and she moves up 1 spot in the rankings to number 2. Erin ends her 9-fight winning streak. She starts a new losing streak and is 6-1 in the UFC. She moves down 1 spot in the rankings to number 3. I think it's plain and simple. Manon will get the winner of Valentina and Alexa Grasso in the Ultimate Fighter finale. And for Erin, I think she could fight Caitlin Sermonara, who just lost to Macy Barber. That would be a great fight for both women. Another quality opportunity for Erin to stay where she wants to be. Matchmakers, make it happen. But Manon Fiorot, holy cow. Thank God that happened, because the rest of the night was just chaotic. A lot of the vibes ruined by some of the officiating and whatnot. We had the funny reffing situation, the Anton Turkalj fight. That was fight of the night, though. That was bonkers. You're all excited. The Malkoum fight, we never really got to see it go. There was some moments from each fighter, but Andre put himself out of the fight with a blast double to his head. Julio Arce, he did what he did. Was an early stoppage, but he was on his way to win. Classic Virna fight. I mean, you got to give her credit, but I hate to see it. Nate the Train, keeping the show going on. Moving in the main card, Chidi defending takedowns over and over. A nice showing by Kyle Nelson. Nursultan steamrolled Cedricus until the eye poke situation. Chris Weidman looking good in his return fight. Drama with the eye poke. Buckley basically broke Vicente Luque, although it was an early stoppage. And then Manon doing things for 25 minutes. That sets us up this weekend back at the Apex. But we have Vegas 90. Earlier start, prelims at 11 a.m. Pacific, main card at 2 p.m. Pacific. Get up Saturday, do a little things, get some coffee, breakfast. Boom, we got the fights. Some good fights we will not break down. You have the 15th ranked Melissa Mullins taking on Nora Cornell. Dan Argueta, Ultimate Fighter alum, taking on Contender Series alum Jim Matsumoto in his UFC debut. We have the famous Contender Series alum Trevor Peake taking on Charlie Campbell. And then Johnny Walker's brother, Walter Walker, making his UFC debut against Lucas Bresky. But we're going to break it off in the prelims. We have the return of Jermaine, the Iron Lady Durandamy, 39 years old with a 10-4 record, taking on Norma the Immortal Dumont, 33 years old with a 10-2 record and the number 11 next to her name. I'm sorry, I'll say this. I should probably not say this. I know other people say this, but I should probably clean it up. Every time I think of Norma, I just think she should be the dump truck Dumont. She's got a big old booty. And when she did weigh-ins one week, what's the girl analyst? Breaking down. She does a lot of the Apex cards. She's the first play-by-play women ex-fighter announcer. And she was like, man, she is packing a dump truck. And she was thinking what we were all thinking. So for me, the nickname for Norma is the dump truck Dumont. And it just works good with her last name. It flows. But I'll get out of the clouds here. So this is a great fight for the women's bantamweight division. What exists of it, that is. You know, Norma's been one of the better fighters in the division. And Jermaine in her days had rolled through all of her competition that wasn't named Amanda Nunez. Now, she really hasn't fought anyone since 2020. She's turning 40 at the end of the month. That's a pretty high age for a woman. She did have a baby. She did battle an injury, had to withdraw from a fight. So there's a lot of unknowns here. But breaking it down, Jermaine has a boxing and Muay Thai style. She was a kickboxing world champion in 2005, 6, and 8. She's the former featherweight champion when that weight class existed, mostly because her and Amanda Nunez. She is a Strikeforce alum. I'm sure Kayla Harrison's wishing that existed today. She's on a 1-fight winning streak, which was in October of 2020. She has a 4-inch reach advantage and a 2.5-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Norma has a Sanda style. She trains at a Syndicate MMA, has a brown belt in BJJ, a black belt in Sanda. She has the most bouts in UFC women's division history. She is tied with Megan Anderson and Felicia Spencer for the most bouts in UFC women's featherweight division history at 6. This division did not last long. It was not visually appealing to fans, so they just cut it. She has the most unanimous decision wins in featherweight division history with 4. Most decision wins in featherweight division history with 5. The most total fight time in the featherweight division at 1 hour and 31 minutes and 26 seconds. She has the most total takedowns landed in featherweight division history with 9. She is a Jungle Fight alum and on a 3-fight winning streak. Now, Norma's definitely fighting the best that she has in her career, and we really have no idea what Germain's going to bring after so much time off. I do believe, though, and after a baby, will she even consider fighting? Was she considering retiring? Has she been training? I do believe, though, even though Germain is almost 40, that she will have the striking advantage in this fight. I do think if Norma can get a takedown, which I'm sure she will attempt a lot, keep Germain down throughout the fight, she will have the advantage. But I think that Germain's going to do enough to stay on her feet. I think she's going to piece up Norma when it's a striking affair. For that reason, I'm taking the underdog. I'm taking Germain to random me, but I'm avoiding that on a parlay where possible. Norma in her prime, probably going to take her down to death. Moving on, we have Alex, the Great White Morano, 33 years old with a 23-9 record, taking on Court, the Crusher McGee, 39 years old with a 22-12 record. This is another fight with a decent age gap. Both fighters in different situations in their career. Alex has definitely been through it lately with some tough fights, high-quality opponents. And Court's just looking to get a win to keep his UFC career alive. He's an OG. He's been there, done that, trying to continue to fight professionally. Breaking this one down, Alex is an orthodox fighter. He trains out of Fortis MMA. He has a second-degree black belt in BJJ, a black belt in Taekwondo. He's a Legacy FC and Fury Fighting alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-2 since 2022. Now, Court has a purple belt in BJJ. He's got a 4th-degree black belt in Kajun Kenbo. He has a black stripe red belt in Shintoshi Karate. He is the Ultimate Fighter 11 champion. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 1-2 since 2022. He has a 3.5-inch reach advantage and a 2.5-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Court has always been just a tough, durable dude. If you know his story, what he's come from, it's immaculate. He just wears his opponents down. As the fight grows longer, he finds his moments. But Alex does a great job with his energy over the course of a 15-minute fight. He's got his jab going, his kicks going. He's got nice footwork. He moves awkwardly. It's hard to hit, and has decent defense. I think he's going to control the center of the octagon, keep the distance, and make this his style of a fight. Court's really going to have to put the energy in making this fight ugly, look to close range, and get grappling exchanges if he's going to have a chance. I'm taking the Great White, though. I'm taking Alex Morano. We put him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. In the main card, we have Ignacio La Jola Bahamondes, 26 years old with a 14-5 record, taking on Christos the Spartan Iagos, 34 years old with a 20-11 record. Now, this is actually a pretty fun fight. I mean, Ignacio, only 26, 19 pro fights, has shown a ton of potential in the UFC. He's really looking to get some wins stacked up. He continually improves fight over fight, again, only at 26. Meanwhile, Christos has been in his prime. He is looking for some momentum to stack up those wins before he gets on the wrong age of 30 and slows down with age. Breaking this down, Ignacio is an Island Fights, Titan FC, LFA, and Dana White Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-1 since 2022. 9 of his 14 wins are via knockout, and he does have a 4-inch reach advantage in this fight. Now, Christos trains out of Killcliff FC. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He is an RFA alum and former champ. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 1-2 since 2022. 8 of his 20 wins are via knockout. 6 of his 11 losses are via submission. Now, I do think Christos is the more well-rounded fighter than Ignacio, but Bahamondes has that length. He has the speed. He's just a challenge to fight for opponents in this weight class. He also has some impressive wins since the Contender Series, but I do think he still has a lot of room to grow. It's been a little bit more than 8 months since we last saw him, so he's had some time to focus on his craft, get better, and sharpen his strengths. The skills that are his strengths. And Christos is better with grappling. He's fought stiffer competition in his career. But for me, this is a close fight. But I'm going to take the young Bahamondes. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We have Morgan, the Last Pirate Scherer, with a 19-9-1 record, taking on Jose Chepe Mariscal, 31 years old with a 15-6 record. Now, you want to talk about violence? Morgan and Chepe bring it. They will always entertain in their fights and put on a show in the main card. Both men newer to the UFC, but they have made their marks and styles known quickly, so don't blink in this one. Morgan is a Cage Warriors alum. He's on a 4-fight winning streak, 1-0 in the UFC. 11 of his 19 wins are via knockout. And Chepe trains at an Elevation Fight Team. He's a Ring of Combat, LFA, Cage Fury, and Cage Warriors alum. He's on a 5-fight winning streak, 2-0 in the UFC. 7 of his 15 wins are via knockout. 3 of his 6 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now, this is hard to pick. I've only seen one fight from Morgan in his UFC debut, but I love the way he carried himself, his fighting prowess, his body language, his confidence, and just his fighting style overall. But Mariscal is not going to back down to anyone. He has a good amount of pro experience as he enters his prime. And I do think the longer the fight goes, the more it's going to favor Chepe. But Morgan's going to come out hot. I think he's going to come out for a finish. For that reason, I'm taking the Last Pirate. I'm putting Morgan on my parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. Let me get a sip of water here. We have Alexander the Great Ape Hernandez, 31 years old, with a 14-7 record, taking on Damon. It has been Action Jackson, but I guess it's now the Preacher Jackson, so we'll go with the Preacher. I like Action Jackson better. 35 years old with a 22-6-1 record. Now here we get two men in their primes. They've had quality wins in the UFC, but have been struggling to stack up wins and get that momentum. Especially for Damon, the time is now. This could be a bit of a clash of styles affair. Alexander's going to look to keep this on the feet, fire away with his big, powerful strikes. And Damon's probably going to look to get the fight to the octagon and get his jiu-jitsu going. But breaking it down, Alexander trains out of Factory X. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's bounced to and from lightweight and featherweight a couple times. In his UFC debut, he had the 2018 upset of the year against Beneil Dariush. Pretty wild to think about. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is only 1-3 since 2022. And 6 of his 14 wins are via knockout. Now, Damon trains out of Fortis MMA. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He's the King of the Cage, Bellator, and Legacy FC alum. He was a Legacy FC former champ. He was an interim LFA champ. He was an RFA and PFL alum as well. He's been everywhere, man. He did have 2 stints in the UFC as well. So through some of that, he had a couple fights in the UFC, went elsewhere, LFA interim, and I think came back to the UFC. He is on a 2-fight losing streak. He is 3-2 since 2022. 15 of his 22 wins are via submission, and 4 of his 6 losses are via knockout. That even emphasizes the point. He might look for takedowns. He's been a little chinny, and Alexander has some power. Now Damon, he ain't balding. I mean, his hairline was way back here. he got some hair treatment or something. He's looking fresh now. But Damon is a slick veteran. Alexander's been caught in a bunch of sticky situations, especially when it comes to grappling. I think he does need to be more measured, really come in with a good game plan, keep his distance, strike from range, and not be overly aggressive. Let the fight play out. You don't have to try to get a knockout in 4 minutes. I think Damon's going to wait for Hernandez to make a mistake, find an opening, land big shots, or look for those takedowns. I have really been back and forth. I am not putting this on a parlay, but for the sake of picking, I will take Alexander Hernandez, the young man that really needs a win in his prime. And then we have the main event. I hate that this is in the Apex. Poor Chris Curtis. We have Brendan All-In Allen, 28 years old with a 23-5 record and the number 6 next to his name, taking on Chris Action Man Curtis, 36 years old with a 31-10 record and the number 15 next to his name. Now, this is actually the second time these guys have fought. It's a rematch from December of 2021, which really wasn't that long ago, but the fighters have had a lot different trajectories since. Since then, Brendan's been on a roll. Chris has had somewhat mixed results with the best in the division. And as I've mentioned, when it comes to rematches, especially like the one that these guys had in their first meeting where Chris got a TKO finish in the first round, there's a lot of mental game that comes to play. There's going to be a side of confidence that Chris has with his striking, who got the finish in round 1. Brendan, he's been on a big momentous roll that can maybe take care of that mentally, but he's going to have those thoughts and feelings. It's just human nature. They've felt each other out. They know each other's power. They know where they stand. I just don't think Chris has really taken leaps in his game. He's older. He's been around a long time. He really is the fighter that he is. And I think he might have less confidence in his game overall with some of the results he's had. He's spoken openly about it on the MMA Hour and social media. And Allen's a dad now. He's got that dad strength. He's full of confidence with all those wins since their first meeting. So it should be a doozy. Breaking this down, and this was a short notice fill-in for Marvin Vettori, which I was super pumped for Brendan Allen, Marvin Vettori, but Chris Curtis stepping in. Brendan trains out of Kill Cliff FC. He has a black belt in BJJ. 3 of his last 4 fights have been performance of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. He's a Legacy FC Contender Series alum, and he's an LFA alum and former champion with 2 successful title defenses. He's on a 6-fight winning streak since Chris Curtis' first matchup, 12-2 in the UFC, with the only other loss being Chris's best friend and training partner, former champion Sean Strickland. 14 of his 23 wins are via submission. Now, Chris trains out of Extreme Couture. He has a purple belt in BJJ. 2 of his last 4 fights have been performance of the night or fight of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. He was the 2021 Comeback Fighter of the Year. He's a PFL Contender Series and Icon Fighting alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak, is 3-2-1 since 2022, and 17 of his 31 wins are via knockout. Now, in this rematch, I really do think Brendan Allen has just leveled up his skills a lot. He's still not even in his prime at 28. I think his mental game's a lot stronger as well. He's been training with a really good gym. And I think Chris is just trying to get back in the groove. This is a good moment, short notice, take on a guy you've already defeated, you're confident about. I think Chris is going to come out aggressive, obviously with his boxing and striking. Him and Sean both finished Brendan Allen. But I don't think Brendan's going to, copy and paste from the first fight. I think he's going to look to get a lot of takedowns, potentially look to submit Chris Curtis. Chris traditionally has amazing takedown defense, so we'll see if that works. If it does stay boxing, it's going to be really interesting, especially if how the first fight played out. I think Brendan's improved his striking, is good enough all around. I think he can get the decision victory, potentially even a submission finish. For that reason, I'm all in on Brendan Allen. We put him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. But enough of this. The build up and anticipation is over. UFC 300 is going down with 12 former UFC champions on the card. The opening bout, 2 former champions, Davison Figueiredo at flyweight, Cody Garbrandt, former bantamweight champion in bantamweight, the second bantamweight bout for Davison. And the headliner is Powhatan Alex Pereira taking on Sweet Dreams Jamal Hill and 2 hard-hitting light heavyweights. I'm actually going to be in Vegas that weekend. Ironically enough, when the hockey schedule came out, my friend with season tickets got me Avs Knights game for my first Knights hockey event. I've heard the glory of, I'm not a massive hockey fan, but my Avs are good, so I'm tuned in more than ever. I think they're in a good chance to win the ship this year, the Stanley Cup. And these are 2 of the best teams. The Knights, historically tough for the Avs, so super excited about it. Do not have a UFC 300 ticket, sadly. I went to $299, spent a pretty penny for the Sugar Show to do his thing. And I've talked about, can UFC 300 really put on that good of a show? Well, as we are getting nearer reviewing the card, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so stacked. It's going to be funny to see what actually is the better product, $299 or $300. But I am not going to be able to dish out the $1,500 decent ticket price point. So I will be in Vegas, probably do a watch party somewhere, try to be around it. Maybe some scalper sells a ticket really cheap late last second. So you never know. But UFC 300 next week. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, episode 42. Please like, please subscribe, be a friend, spread the word. If you're an MMA fan, you like what I'm talking about, let your other MMA fans know. If you want to chat up about MMA, at Bowsandtkos on socials, X, Instagram, wherever. Send me a DM. Let me know what you want me to chat about, or let me know your thoughts. If you're in the Phoenix area, in the Valley, love to have guests on. If you're a hardcore MMA fan, would love to be able to banter with somebody, or maybe start doing some social media stuff. But other than that, I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.